Alright, welcome back everybody. I'm very happy to finally be able to take some time to do a tutorial I've been wanting to do for some time. This is going to be a tutorial on a very simple DIY way to pimp your head sculpts. I've got this quarter scale aftermarket Tony Stark head sculpt that I want to work on. Now it looks pretty good, and I think based on what I'm seeing on the image here, you might think it doesn't need any help, but the light I'm using throws everything a bit more into relief and shows more detail than you see in actual daylight. Plus I want to do battle damage and show you how to do the blood and all that sort of thing. So I've got this before picture, and I'll show you the after picture, and in those pictures in broad daylight it'll be much clearer. So what are you going to need? Some very simple stuff. I use a needle for adding pores and some more skin folds and all that. You're going to need, if you want to do the battle damage, you're going to need something of a blood color enamel. I use this stuff. Let's see if it can focus. Yeah, the umbral enamel. You can use different stuff. To finish your work and seal it, you're going to need gloss varnish for very specific locations, but mostly you will need the matte varnish to get the skin to look flatter. A shiny, plasticky skin type is a dead giveaway. But most importantly, you're going to need permanent, high quality color pencils. I use the permanent line from the German brand Faber-Castell, and I have several in different flesh tones, and I use a pencil sharpener to give me a very sharp edge so that I can do details that you could normally never do with a brush or any type. Plus the colors are always consistent, so I really like using pencils, and since they're permanent and afterwards going to be sealed, it's not going to be a problem with permanence of anything. So I got some reference shots from Iron Man I want to work with from the movie, and we'll be looking at those. I really like these close-ups inside the helmet, and they give us a clue to where to look for, because they're the best close-ups I could find. So let's get to work and work on step one. So the first thing I like to do is start with the needle and just add a little bit more detail in the lip area, get some grooves in there. The beard, get some more separation. It's probably hard to show that on camera, but if you try it yourself, you'll find that it really does add something. But most importantly, I use this to get more skin pores, like that. These are important areas. These are important areas. Maybe the forehead. Can also use that to add some more creases to his face, just to get the clean look, get rid of the clean look a bit, because to me, especially when I look in a close-up, you know, it's like he's wearing too much makeup. The aftermarket head sculpts usually are slightly less detailed than the Hot Toys ones, but even though they sometimes, actually most of the times, can benefit from this entire process I go through, especially in real life. So add some creases under the eyes. Guy is 50 years old, so let's make sure he looks that way. Give him some, what are they called, the laugh lines in the corner of the eye. Alright, so next let's go into the skin tones a bit more. Maybe as a child you remember these the search pictures or the find the difference pictures, and that's basically what I do. I go back and forth and see what am I missing in this picture. Usually the first thing that that is missing is red. So I like to get this it's a cadmium red color, and just give them a little bit of blush, and not in the female type way, but you need a bit more. The first thing to go away when you put on too much makeup is the variation in skin tones. Now, when I do this, I strategically place the red where I want to emphasize the sculpt. So around the cheekbones, maybe around the cheek, and usually a bit around here. And it's subtle work because we're going to be doing a lot more later on, so it's not going to be showing up that much at first, but it'll build, and then when I show you the before and after picture you'll see the total image. But less is more, as I always say. So be strategic about where you place the red, but only time, you know. So as you can see, there's a lot more depth into going into that picture. So I use that to enhance the parts of the sculpt I want to enhance. And the beauty is it's easily reversible. So please don't worry about making mistakes. You can do that and brush it off until you seal it with the lacquer, the matte lacquer. It doesn't matter, whatever you do, it's usually quite reversible. So trial and error is a good way to learn anything, and let's do that here. So again, here, and this area is where I concentrate, because usually those are the areas that show the most red through a person's skin. But in just adding a bit of, well, blotchiness to the skin, you're already making it more realistic. You're adding colors and tone to the skin, which to the eye makes it look more realistic and gives more depth to the portrait. Use your fingers to smudge it a bit and take it down a bit. So I always go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that's the way I build the sculpts. Now in this case, because I want to do the battle damage look, it's a good idea to also add a bit more red from exertion and all that around the eyes. Make him, well, look a little bit less healthy. Give the sculpt a bit more drama. I also like to use a little bit of brown to start suggesting a bit of smudging and dirt. And it's also great to enhance the look of the skin with either a stubble or just pores or anything really. So like that, and I'm getting a bit of bluish gray to get the slightly black eye look like you see here. in here. Now let's go to one of the close-ups. The final one here is a good one to me. Here you can see the blotchiness of the skin I'm talking about. So I get this, what is it, ivory type color to get some whiteness around the eyes again, to make him look like he's been through hell and back. Plus, I'm getting some actual white because I see a lot of gray hair coming through the mustache, which is why I use a very fine point to add some of that. Brush it back. I do realize the flaw in this type of tutorial, that I'm seeing more detail than you guys are seeing, so I really encourage you to just try it out at home and see what I'm talking about here. So, another thing that Robert Downey Jr. is known for is these amazing, almost female lashes, and I like to use a really sharp black pencil and add a bit more. Be very careful, it's easy to overdo that. So just add a little bit, because in this sculpt they're hardly showing. I always use this time to also add a little bit of black to the brown, so you got the brown, the black and the white type gray, really adding to the detail. Also in the hair. I'll be coming back with lighter browns and different shades to add some variation there as well. Plus it's too shiny for my taste anyway. I usually like to do the nostrils because they're usually not black enough. And here you see those reds that need to come through. And then next to that, a bit of the ivory. Also use that on the lips. Now I have a grayish brown called burnt umber to enhance the lines in his face. Alright, so just slowly keep working away at the differences you see. For instance, I see a little bit of a little, I don't know, cleft up in his nose. All these kinds of details add up if you just keep working at it. Take it back a notch if you're not happy with the results, if it's just a bit too much. Also important, just walk away sometimes, just get a fresh perspective later. I see some red accents here, so now let's start working at the little bit of a black eye he's got there. So start off with a warm gray is what I like. Like that. And then I have a sort of purplish color underneath the eyes. And right here, this is the most important part here. Then a little bit here. really just be a keen observer, and anything that pops out at you, it's probably a good idea to just put that in. Again, if you really don't like it, you can take it back. And as you can see, he is looking a bit worse for wear, which is what we're after. Use your fingers to make the effects subtle if you need to. And there's really the beautiful aspect of using these pencils. If you have high quality permanent type pencils like this, you can just really get in there and make detail and a lot of very subtle color variations, just like in reality. I need a little bit of bright red here. Now, normally this would also be an area where I might consider using less of the matte finish to give the rest of the skin a dull appearance, and then this slightly shiny, because there's a reason they call this a shiner. We want to do that with the lips as well, and then if you consider that all of this is just the same material but with a different finish, the gloss on the eyes, the really matte on the skin when we're done with it, and then a little bit shiny here, and then we're going to give the hair another different type of finish. You really make this thing come alive, even though all of it is the same material. To the eye, you're suggesting it's not. So that's another thing to add realism, the way to do that. So I'm going to be hacking away at this a little bit more until I'm satisfied, and I'll come back. Alright, so I'm happy with the way things are progressing. Now, one of the other things I noticed is his nose seems to be a bit rounder and wider than what I see. So again, with shading, I can emphasize that on a sculpt that might be slightly different. I'll insert a picture here of the Han Solo sculpt I worked on. And I did the same, especially around the mouth, that is quite different. Usually these sculpts have good bones, which means that a paint job might still bring out the most of them. But as you can see here, I'm shading where I see the actual lines on the sculpt. Like I said, he's got a little nose butt right there and a wider tip of the nose. There's a line here. So all these things are ways to change the sculpt without actually going in there with a knife and all that sort of thing. So paint and shading can do a lot. As you can see, there's a nice natural sheen now on the lips, partially because of the finish the pencils give off, and that's another place where I won't be using any what is the name, matte varnish finish type stuff, because these pencils are pretty permanent, so if you don't wash them or anything, this stuff won't come off, and we'll only want the skin, except for this area, to be flat. So yeah, let's keep digging away, and I hope in a few minutes to be able to start work on the actual blood that is not in this reference picture. I couldn't find one that is close enough. That's too bad though, but I also want to teach you how to do that, so we're going to be incorporating more than you see in this image on the head sculpt. Again, look at these shaded areas here. So get your reds and warm grays and slightly subtly shade that, and again it's like it's there in the sculpt. Then bring it back down to where you feel comfortable, but Yeah, so let's keep working. All right, facial hair. Aside from the fact that, like I showed you before, there's supposed to be some gray in there. Variation in color is always a good idea. I'll superimpose my work on Obi-Wan Kenobi now to show you how I use that, especially in the facial hair and other places, to really make that sculpt come alive. But let's look. Where were we? Here. I think his brows are supposed to be heavier, and a stray hair here and there will also help sell the sculpt. So if you want to make it wider, just make it slightly bushier as well. Same here. Same goes for the mustache. Needs to be a little wider and a little bushier. Remember to sharpen your pencils every once in a while. Now, if you want to follow me in this thing, this is a panel scribe tool, and I use it to get the parts of the hair that are just roughly molded and create a lot more detail in there. Again, you're free to ignore this part, but when it comes to the hair, I want more detail and I want more color variation, a different finish. And all the scribing I do now will show up later when I do a wash. Again, this is extra and much less pronounced and visible than let's say the anything you do to the face, especially the scarring and damaging, battle damaging, if you will. But I like to be thorough, so this will definitely give the impression of a more detailed hair, especially once the washes go into my cuts, and then I just take off the excess with a piece of cloth, and you get the brown on top and the black in all the little cuts, giving a more detailed and realistic look. Alright, so now I've finished the scratching and etching I wanted to do for now, and I'm going to cover it with a soot type weathering liquid, a wash that's going inside all the little scratches I made. I'm going to let that dry, and then I can just paint and dry brush over that. And especially with the dry brushing techniques I showed you in the other video, I can keep the really dark stuff inside the scratches, the really black, and then use the dry brushing to do on top, and that way I can create texture. I can create several layers of color and paint. So onto that. Now I'm going to show you a close-up of what I did, and you can probably see it here. Instead of these large chunks of hair, you see that there are many individual strands, and there's just a lot more detail going on. Now it's still very shiny, or as we would have said in the 90s, he has the wet look hair. That's because the wash I use is the Model Mates Black Soot Black, which leaves a shiny finish. But after that I'm going to be dry brushing the different tones of black and all the way down to khaki actually, after which I will seal that with the matte varnish to give it the final look I'm looking for. So here is a close-up of where we are now. Still not done, but getting ever closer. Let's finish up the hair and do this by creating some several shades of brown, and then by mixing these together I automatically get several shades of brown, and I just choose the one I want for whatever patch I'm working on. I'll begin with some dry brushing again, like I showed in another video, which just means you put some color on the brush, take most of it off again, and then while you would use the black wash with the grain, you go against it and quite flat to apply the top layer, so you get the brown color on top and the black in the ridges and all the cuts you've made with the hair. We'll finish that off with the maybe satin, probably a flat type of varnish. Alright, with that done, I'm going to add some battle damage to the face, blood here. But before we start with the actual blood, we need some scuffing and swelling of the skin, so we need something of a bit of a red patch first, something subtle, and then we can put the enamel blood paint over that. I might overdo it for one head sculpt, but I want to show you all the options, so I'm going to add a cut here, maybe here, and something on the lip too, show you what's possible. Alright, so I'm going to be adding a cut here, and I'm going to actually be using a needle for that, because we want very little paint and we want very little flow. So I just get the needle, and as you can see, you can easily apply just a little bit, and I'll be using that same bit to get the drop of blood on the lip, just making it drop down a little bit. Like that. Now I'll be reducing that later, but as you can see, I don't know if you can see, but from where I'm sitting I see a really nice glossy sheen, and I'm going to be adding some more later when I finish off everything with varnish, and that will really help sell the difference between the blood and the skin. So now I'm cleaning off my needle and start to shape the blood a bit more. And I will be coming back with a little bit of lighter and brighter red in the center there. As you can see, there's an easy way to use the needle to shape the paint I've just applied to really give the shape of a nasty cut in a thin line. Like so. Make it drop down. Like so. We'll just set that to dry. Also, while we're still waiting for stuff to dry, I'm getting my gloss varnish, and usually it's the aftermarket stuff, but sometimes it's the Hot Toys stuff as well that really doesn't have the proper gloss finish on the eyes as well, again, which really helps sell it. So again, I'm getting a needle, putting some gloss varnish on it, and just applying a little bit. And I only apply it on the pupil, really, again, to make as many different surfaces and finishes as possible. All right, so I'm going to sharpen my purple once again to really emphasize, so I can really emphasize the cut here. And give them a little bit of bruising around the edges. As you can see now in the different light, the different finishes and especially the gleam in the eyes have improved. So now it's time to seal this. I'm getting my matte varnish. You can either get the smaller bottle, which is the 7520, or if you're into airbrushing at all, the premium matte varnish, the 62062 is a good one. Get a very clean brush and start applying that. Shake well before use. Now again, this is a chance to get different types of surface finishes on your sculpt. So leave the lips alone. I do suggest getting the hair and giving that a matte varnish. Careful around the eyes because you want the high gloss finish there. So be careful to stay away from the blood and like this, the bruising. It's good to have a different type of finish on that. So we'll just let that dry and evaluate the results.